A 31-year-old woman set out on a multi-day solo hike in Colorado to spend time alone, but disappeared in the wilderness. An intensive search found nothing, and for 2 years, the case remained a mystery. The first clue appeared later when damaged gear was discovered, along with a memory card hidden in her shoe that suggested she left a final message. The alarm began during a morning briefing for newly promoted command staff at the Denver Police Department. When Piper Crumvita's name was called, no one answered. Missing the first day of a command assignment was highly unusual. Piper, 31, was known as a disciplined and reliable officer, and her promotion was the result of years of work. Her absence immediately raised concern. Calls to her phone went straight to a full voicemail, so officers contacted her parents. They explained that Piper had taken leave before starting the new role and planned a solo hike in Rocky Mountain National Park to clear her mind. She was supposed to finish the trip 2 days earlier, but by the time of the briefing, she was already overdue. Piper was not only an experienced hiker, but also a trained police officer familiar with survival and risk assessment. Her disappearance suggested something serious had happened. By midday, she was officially declared missing. Rangers soon located her locked car at the trailhead listed in her permit. The last contact was a short text to her mother 5 days earlier near the park entrance saying she was starting the hike and would soon lose cell service. After that, communication stopped. Search teams launched a massive operation across the rugged terrain of Rocky Mountain National Park. Helicopters scanned valleys and forests from the air, while ground teams and search dogs combed the trails. Despite days of effort, no campsites, gear, or signs of Piper were found. Her parents arrived at the command center and gave investigators detailed descriptions of her equipment and habits, hoping her skills would keep her alive. Meanwhile, detectives checked her background, finances, and personal life for possible threats or conflicts, but nothing suspicious appeared. After a week of searching, the teams still had no clues. There was no sign she had even passed the first part of her planned route, leaving investigators with only one conclusion. Whatever happened to Piper had happened somewhere deep in the mountains. How could an experienced hiker disappear without a trace on a marked trail? For weeks, investigators had no answer. While reviewing Piper's financial records, detectives discovered something unusual. 3 weeks before the trip, she had requested specialized ice climbing equipment from a mountaineering shop in Boulder: crampons, ice axes, ropes, and glacier anchors. The order was canceled 2 days later, but it raised a new theory. Investigators wondered if Piper had secretly planned a dangerous climb beyond her official route. Known for pushing her limits, she might have attempted a technical ascent in one of the park's remote ice fields. If she had fallen there, finding her would be extremely difficult. Search operations shifted toward these high-altitude glaciers. Specialized alpine rescue teams were deployed to remote areas with unstable ice and avalanche risks. Helicopters inserted crews onto the glaciers while teams searched the terrain roped together, probing the snow for hidden crevasses and scanning for any sign of gear or a campsite. The operation was exhausting and dangerous. At one point, a small avalanche nearly hit a search team, and a helicopter had to make an emergency landing during a sudden whiteout. Despite days of effort, no trace of Piper was found. Eventually, the glacier theory collapsed. The canceled equipment order appeared to be a dead end that had cost valuable time. During this period, investigators briefly considered a remote place called the High Alpine Lodge, located slightly off the main trails. Because it wasn't part of Piper's planned route, they assumed she had never gone there and never interviewed the staff, a small decision that later proved important. As autumn arrived, heavy snow and dropping temperatures forced search teams to stop. With no leads and worsening conditions, the massive operation was scaled back. For Piper's parents, the silence was unbearable. Through the winter and into spring, they organized their own searches, hiring teams and walking the trails themselves, hoping to find any sign of their daughter. A year passed with no answers. By the summer of 2017, nearly 2 years after Piper vanished, the case had gone cold. Investigators still had no evidence explaining what happened. That same summer, a field biologist named Ellen Wilder was working deep in Rocky Mountain National Park, employed by the U.S. Geological Survey he was studying forests devastated by invasive beetles that were killing large areas of pine trees. His work took him far from tourist paths into dense, rarely visited areas of the park. On July 21, while documenting tree damage in a rugged section of forest, he slowly moved through steep terrain and thick undergrowth, recording observations on his tablet as the quiet wilderness surrounded him. Miles from the nearest trail, Ellen Wilder was working alone in a remote section of forest when he came across a massive area of fallen trees from an old windstorm. While climbing over the tangled trunks, he noticed a piece of gray-blue synthetic fabric partly hidden under branches and pine needles. At first, he assumed it was abandoned camping gear. When he pulled it free, he saw it was a small dome tent in terrible condition, torn, moldy, and clearly left there for a long time. As he moved it, several items fell out: worn clothing, a fleece jacket, hiking pants, socks, and a pair of muddy hiking shoes. The discovery felt strange. These weren't random trash items, but personal belongings heavily damaged by weather. Then, he found a soaked wallet in the jacket pocket. Inside were badly damaged documents and an ID card, the photo ruined by water and mold. Ellen immediately realized this could be something serious. He used his satellite phone to call park rangers and reported abandoned gear and personal documents deep in the park, giving his exact coordinates. Within hours, rangers and investigators arrived and secured the area as a possible crime scene. The items were photographed and sent to a forensic lab in Denver for examination. While cataloging the evidence, a technician inspecting one of the hiking shoes felt something hard under the insole. After lifting the worn insert, they found a small black SD memory card intentionally hidden inside the shoe. The discovery immediately drew attention. A concealed memory card suggested someone had deliberately tried to preserve information. At the same time, specialists working on the damaged documents managed to recover fragments from the ID card. Combined with the brand and details of the gear, investigators compared everything to the equipment list Piper's parents had provided years earlier. The match was clear: the tent, clothing, and shoes all belonged to Piper. For her family, the discovery confirmed their worst fear, that she had likely died somewhere in the wilderness. But it also provided the first real connection to her in nearly 2 years. The discovery ended 2 years of uncertainty for Piper's family, confirming she had likely died in the wilderness. For investigators, it transformed the case from a missing person search into a potential homicide investigation. The key evidence was the SD card hidden inside her shoe. Piper wasn't just a hiker, she was a trained police officer who understood evidence preservation. Investigators believe she deliberately concealed the card, likely recording crucial information before her disappearance. The card was sent to a digital forensics lab at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. However, the first attempts to read it failed. Although the card looked intact, 2 years of exposure to heat, cold, and moisture had severely damaged its internal memory. The stored data appeared corrupted and unreadable. The setback was devastating. The card has seemed like the best chance to learn what happened to Piper. Even her family was told the evidence might be useless. Still, the lab continued working. Specialists attempted advanced recovery methods, removing the memory chips and reading them directly in a process known as chip-off forensics. Working under microscopes, technicians cleaned the circuitry and tried delicate repairs. During one attempt to dry the components with controlled heat, a short circuit nearly destroyed the card entirely. Equipment alarms sounded as smoke appeared from the reader. Technicians immediately cut power, barely preventing permanent data loss. Realizing the evidence was extremely fragile, the team abandoned aggressive methods and switched to a slower strategy, rebuilding the data bit by bit, a process that could take weeks or months. While waiting for results, investigators returned to the site where Piper's gear had been found. The scene raised troubling questions. Her belongings were scattered rather than arranged at a campsite, and there were no human remains nearby. Search teams conducted detailed grid searches around the area. Cadaver dogs, drones, radar, and ground crews examined several square miles of forest, streams, and rocky slopes, looking for Piper's body or the missing camera linked to the SD card. Despite the extensive effort, nothing was found. The mystery deepened once again, and the investigation stalled, while everyone waited to see whether the damaged memory card could still reveal the truth. Weeks turned into a month as forensic experts carefully tried to recover data from the damaged SD card. The work was extremely slow, requiring technicians to rebuild fragments of information from corrupted memory chips. Investigators could only wait, knowing the entire case now depended on the lab's success. In late August 2017, the team achieved a partial breakthrough. The photos and videos themselves were too damaged to recover, but technicians managed to extract fragments of metadata from the card's file directory. This data still contained technical information about the missing files, including timestamps and GPS coordinates. The coordinates corresponded to a date shortly after Piper disappeared in September 2015. This confirmed the SD card had been used after she entered the park, suggesting she had recorded something before her fate. The location pointed to a remote part of the park several miles from where her gear had been found. The area was known for complex karst terrain, limestone formations filled with sinkholes and hidden caves rarely visited by hikers. Authorities organized a specialized expedition to the site. A team of mountaineers, cave rescue experts, and tactical officers set out on a multi-day mission, navigating dense forests, streams, and steep rocky slopes to reach the coordinates. As they approached the location, the landscape grew harsher and more isolated. Limestone cliffs rose above fractured ground until the coordinates finally led them to a narrow crack in a rock face, an unmarked cave entrance hidden by vegetation. The opening was small, forcing the team to crawl through a tight passage before reaching a larger underground chamber. Inside the cold, damp cave system, they searched carefully for any signs of human presence. Near the entrance, they found an aluminum water bottle partly buried under dust. The bottle was collected and sent for testing. When Piper's parents saw the photos, they immediately recognized it was a bottle she always carried on hikes. This confirmed Piper had likely been inside the cave, but forensic tests brought no answers. After 2 years in the damp environment, the bottle contained no usable DNA or fingerprints. The evidence strongly suggested Piper had been there, yet it still didn't explain what happened. Her gear had been discovered miles away, and investigators couldn't determine why she left the cave or why she hid the SD card in her shoe. The expedition provided a new location but few answers. Once again, investigators were left studying maps and trying to reconstruct Piper's final movements as the case remained unresolved. The cave discovery left investigators in a difficult position. The SD card metadata and the water bottle suggested Piper had been there, but there was no solid forensic proof. Without stronger evidence, the theory remained uncertain. With no progress, investigators decided to revisit the early stages of the 2015 search, looking for overlooked leads. They focused on finding a human element, a witness who might explain the fragmented digital evidence. During this review, attention returned to the High Alpine Lodge, a small seasonal lodge near the park that had been dismissed earlier because it wasn't on Piper's planned route. 2 years later, with evidence suggesting she may have deviated from her itinerary, the lodge became important again. In October 2017, detectives visited the lodge and spoke with its owner, Quila Brasher, who had run it for more than 20 years. When they showed her Piper's photo, she immediately recognized her and said the woman had visited the lodge around the time she disappeared. Then she revealed something unexpected. Piper hadn't been alone. Quila remembered her sitting by the window having lunch with a man. They seemed relaxed and friendly, talking comfortably together. This was a major development. For 2 years, investigators believed Piper had been hiking alone. Now there was a witness placing her with an unknown man shortly before she vanished. Quila described him as fit, confident, and experienced in the outdoors, possibly a guide. The meal had been paid in cash, and the lodge had no security cameras, leaving no physical evidence of his identity. Investigators began preparing a composite sketch and comparing the description with local guides and park workers. The case suddenly regained momentum. But the next morning, Quila called back. After reviewing photos online, she said she had made a mistake. The woman she saw at the lodge was not Piper. She explained that many hikers looked similar and that her memory had likely been influenced by the photo. Despite investigators questioning her further, she insisted the identification had been wrong. With no supporting evidence, the promising lead collapsed. Investigators were forced to treat the sighting as unreliable. and once again, the case stalled. After the lodge witness withdrew her statement, investigators again had no solid lead. The possibility of an unknown man remained, but without reliable evidence, the case stalled. By spring 2018, the investigation had effectively gone cold. Piper's gear, the hidden SD card, and the cave coordinates had all led to dead ends. The case was eventually filed among other unsolved disappearances in the Rocky Mountains. A small breakthrough came during a routine cold case review. A new investigator decided to study Piper's professional background instead of focusing only on the wilderness search. While reviewing police academy records, he noticed she had once completed a specialized course called Wilderness Tactical Operations. The course trained officers in survival, tracking, and rescue skills in remote terrain, and was taught by civilian experts such as mountaineers and local guides. Investigators realized this group of instructors might connect Piper's police work with the environment where she vanished. They began cross-referencing the course contractor list with guides working in Rocky Mountain National Park. After weeks of checking records and databases, one name stood out: Vaughn Goh, a well-known local tour guide who had previously worked with law enforcement on wilderness training. Although the connection was indirect, his description loosely matched the man initially mentioned by the lodge owner. A deeper background check revealed something more troubling. Goh had a serious criminal history. 15 years earlier, he had been convicted of aggravated robbery and served 10 years in prison. Investigators also learned that Goh frequently guided clients to remote off-trail areas, including regions near the cave connected to the SD card coordinates. The circumstantial evidence began to build. Because Goh was an experienced outdoorsman who could easily disappear into the wilderness, authorities decided not to approach him at home. Instead, they planned to arrest him while he was leading a hiking group inside the park. In June 2018, a tactical team was deployed by helicopter and secretly tracked Goh's tour group for 2 days through dense forest. They waited for the right moment to intercept him in terrain where escape would be difficult. The opportunity came at a narrow mountain pass where the group had to slow down. 2 undercover officers, posing as park rangers, approached, explaining they were conducting a routine safety and permit check due to recent bear activity. Goh cooperated calmly and began speaking with them while showing his permit. During the conversation, the officers slowly guided him away from the group and out of earshot. Once he was isolated, their tone changed immediately. They informed him he was under arrest for the disappearance of Piper Krumvita and quickly placed him in handcuffs. The arrest was carried out quietly, and the hikers in Goh's group didn't realize what had happened until he was taken away. He was airlifted from the park and brought to Denver for questioning. During the interrogation, investigators presented the evidence: his connection to Piper's training network, his knowledge of the cave area, the GPS data from the SD card, and his hidden criminal record. They also hinted that a witness had seen him with Piper at the lodge. At first, Goh denied everything, staying calm and relying on his reputation as a guide. But as investigators pointed out gaps in his story and the evidence against him, his confidence began to break. Eventually, he decided to confess. Goh admitted he met Piper at the High Alpine Lodge in September 2015. They quickly connected and decided to continue hiking together instead of going separately. That night, they camped together and had consensual sex. The next day, Goh suggested showing her a hidden cave he knew well. When they reached it, their conversation became more personal. He told Piper about his past, including his prison sentence for aggravated robbery. Her reaction changed immediately. As a police officer, she felt alarmed, realizing she was alone in a remote cave with a convicted felon. She demanded to leave, and an argument followed. According to Goh, she slapped him, and he pushed her back. Piper fell and struck her head on a rock, losing consciousness. Panicking and believing he had seriously injured a police officer, Goh fled the cave and left her behind. Investigators later concluded that Piper likely regained consciousness after he left. Despite a severe head injury, she tried to document what happened and hid the SD card inside her shoe as evidence. They believe she then tried to escape the area, gathering her gear and attempting to hike out while injured. After traveling several miles, she collapsed in the wilderness where her belongings were later discovered. Following Goh's confession, search teams returned to the area between the cave and the gear discovery site. Cadaver dogs eventually located Piper's skeletal remains beneath a rock overhang. Forensic analysis confirmed her identity and a fatal head injury consistent with the fall described by Goh. He later pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. For Piper's parents, finding her remains finally ended years of painful uncertainty and allowed them to mourn their daughter.